Hello, good day, everyone, and welcome to the UTT SPE Student Chapter technical segment on career development. Our first speaker is Dr. Tricia G. Alvarez. Dr. Tricia G. Alvarez is an experienced geoscientist who has worked on the geology of southeastern Caribbean area from both petroleum industry exploration and development and academic research perspectives. She completed her BSc in geology and graduated with honors from the University of the West Indies, Mona, and graduated with a PhD in geological sciences from the University of Texas at Austin. She's currently employed at Heritage Petroleum Company Limited. She was previously an assistant professor at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, where she delivered geoscience courses at the diploma, undergraduate, and postgraduate levels in the petroleum engineering programs. Her professional interests include application of integrated geologic, geophysical, and remotely sensed datasets for assessment of Earth systems, natural resources, hazards, and socioeconomic impacts. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Tricia G. Alvarez.
Thank you, Brian. So I guess, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, and hopefully we can have an excellent conversation about, how we adapt to these unprecedented times that we're currently in. So if I can just begin. So the I guess we're in some very unprecedented times with the coronavirus, and an interesting quote that I came across in one of the articles, and I guess we've probably all been looking at, these perspectives on projections about what's going to happen with the future of oil. And really, a quote that really stands out is the only thing that, that's certain about oil is uncertainty. And so if we, just a question, can you see the windows, the Zoom windows on my screen, or are you just seeing the PowerPoint?
You see the PowerPoint.
Okay, no Zoom windows.
Yeah, just the PowerPoint.
Excellent. Yes, so, when we look at the history of oil price without, the current situation, we've had a number of events throughout, I guess since the 1700s, but I look probably, more recently since the 1980s, when you had oil plummeting due to oversupply, countries producing and no one willing to cut back. And of course, the impact on that, always tends to be a decrease in employment. So, just a graph here of US employment within the sector shows that, around the 1980s when the price plummeted, we also saw employment levels dropping significantly. And again, within the 90s, 2000s, most recently around 2014, we had another, I guess, crisis that was also, fueled by a global economic crisis within there, that also saw as price, fell, shown the graph shown in the orange, the number of advertisements for jobs also dropped as well. And this year, we know, has been very unprecedented when oil dropped, I guess to zero in some cases. And that has had an impact. So how do we respond to it? And in this case, it's different because it's not just economic drivers, it's the impact of a pandemic that's affecting everywhere within the world. And it affects every single sector. The impact of it, people have been moving around less and less energy is being used. So on top of the oversupply that we were already in, we now have a situation where you have decreased demand as well, exacerbating that, and it's across all sectors. So how do we respond? So I guess the first thing we could do is, manage your emotional response, because a lot of us here, you're students, and you're looking forward to completing your studies, graduating, and getting a job. I think that's everyone's ambition. Get through, you develop certain skills, and you get out into the job market to, I guess, continue to build those skills, and of course, earn a living based on those skills. For those who are close to graduation or who may have immediately graduated, you have entered into a situation where the job market looks a lot different than it did, within the last, few years and even before that. So the first thing really is to stay calm, manage your expectations, and, you know, kind of come to that place of acceptance that yes, we are in that period of uncertainty. And, you know, the other piece, you know, is to keep current of the commentaries that's going on. And if you do, you probably would see that there's very conflicting views on when we will emerge from the crisis and how we will emerge, whether there'll be slow growth or fast growth. You know, I just have one projection here, you know, where they show a strong dip, and they're forecasting, you know, that by, you know, the 2030s or so, 2021, you know, we should begin to see a climb back in production. But you look at other graphs and it's probably not, you know, a different projection. So in addition, so, you know, the first thing is to stay calm. Everybody, we're all in this situation, everybody's in it. But, you know, it's not just, you know, rocking back and saying, well, I can't do anything. You want to be proactive as you stay calm. And what will probably help you to stay calm is taking action. So one of the pieces of action you can take is staying tuned, keeping yourself informed of what's happening in the energy sector, especially if you're looking to get into employment in the energy sector when you graduate. Keep informed of what's happening locally with energy players in the petroleum sector, who's drilling, what's being drilled, what new discoveries are being made. So, you know, you can keep up with that in the local news. But you also want to look outside of Trinidad as well, because we find ourselves in a situation where you may definitely need to think outside of your familiar sphere of reference. So, you know, looking at places like Guyana, which, you know, Trinidad is a very mature petroleum province, but Guyana is an emerging province. They're taking off, they're having, you know, major new discoveries, multiple times volume of oil reserves they have compared to us. So you want to keep abreast of what's happening there. Who are the potential operators working out there? What are they drilling? And, you know, you use that as well to build your skill, read up about it, and then read up about the aspects of petroleum engineering that they may be applying within these areas. And you want to look even beyond the Caribbean region, you know, so, you know, Africa, Gulf of Mexico, Belize, you know, other places in the world where you have petroleum operations. You also want to stay on top of that and to look at trends as well. So keep informed of all of the oil and gas news, look at trends, where do you have emerging markets, where the new discoveries happening, where are layoffs happening, because, you know, that kind of helps you to focus your employment search within that. So it helps you then to kind of identify places where you could potentially find employment and focus your attention on there. And, you know, an important thing to note is that some of the opportunities may lie outside of, you know, what you think is your familiar frame of reference or expectations. So outside of the geographic boundaries of Trinidad and Tobago, and maybe even outside of the petroleum sector as well. You will find there banking and finance companies who may be interested in hiring people with petroleum skills, because, you know, they also play a role in energy, and so you may have skills to bring there. So do not limit, you know, your search as you go forward. You know, think about other players even outside of the petroleum, you know, what we think of as the petroleum sector, who will need the skills of a petroleum engineer. The other thing you need to do is put this network, you know. So you know, this here is an SPE event, and I'm imagining all of you here are members of the SPE. UTT is affiliated and has its accreditation through the Energy Institute, so you are all supposed to be members as well. If you're not, you know, take care of that immediately. And other societies like the APG, the GSTT, you want to become a member of these societies, but not just become a member. And it's easy to become a member. Many of these societies have, you know, no cost for students to join, or very minimal cost. So join, but not only join just to tick the box, but you also want to be active. So find opportunities to actively participate. Attend talks when they happen. There are not too many field trips these days, but when they're happening, go. And when you go, you know, it's not just turning up and being present, but also introducing yourself to people who are there, making conversations with people, finding out what they do and what advice they have for you as a student or someone who is going to graduate soon, as well as how the industry operates. What are they working on? What do they find exciting? How their career has evolved. So, you know, as much as possible, seek opportunities to network. Of course, during this COVID time, meetings aren't physical, so many of the meetings are virtual. So you may attend a meeting. If a speaker, you know, someone gives a talk, You know, you may want to, you'll ask questions at the event, and you may even want to connect with them after the event. You know, if there's a contact email information for them and you have questions, you know, you send them a note and start to build your network in that way. The other thing you could do as you're keeping calm is focus on building your skills. So seeking opportunities to develop and expand what you've learned in the classroom. So for those of you who have graduated or close to graduating, so you're not attending classes right now, there are many online short courses in petroleum engineering topics that you could engage in. Some may be free, some there may be a cost to. Those that are free, you definitely want to take advantage of that. Those that have a cost, you know, you assess, you know, the benefits that you will gain from it, because this is honing and developing your skills. Publications on petroleum engineering studies, both in Trinidad and abroad. You want to, you know, inform and educate yourself about that as well. And then even step out of your core discipline and develop some new skills. Coding is a very important skill that's useful for petroleum engineers and useful in the petroleum sector. So that's something you could look at. Learning a foreign language can also be an asset, you know, if you get employed with a company, you know, somewhere else. And, you know, practice evaluations. There's publicly available data sets of oil and gas, petroleum media, as well as open source software. So if you're home, you know, and you are not yet employed, you know, these are things that you can do to keep your skills active, and things that then you can, you know, talk about in an interview that you know how to do. As you job search, keep an open mind. And I guess I've touched on this before. So, you know, they're the typical players. We think about the operators, but you may want to look outside of them as well, because, you know, they're shrinking. And in some cases, we're hearing people are cutting staff. So you may want to look at consultancies. And, you know, this will involve Google searching, you know, consultants who may want an intern. Or you may even have the opportunity to volunteer for free, and you'll be like, I'm giving my services for free, but you know, you're getting experience as well. And you may need to step outside the discipline completely, but you know, you still build experience, you build soft skills, leadership, and always tailor your applications when you apply to companies to focus on the skills that they're looking for. And these skills you can gain in employment that may not necessarily be in petroleum. So you want to, you know, broaden your search during this time. And then I guess the final point I want, you know, to stay active. You know, one option is to stay in school, and that's an advice that's given to people who are close to graduating or have graduated, because the job market may be tight for a while. So consider, you know, postgraduate studies, doing a master's, where you add some depth, either to petroleum engineering expertise, or you go do another discipline, you do something in finance or economics or geology, to build up that expertise. You know, I guess locally, you know, I guess funding for universities may be shrinking, but you know, overseas there may still be options for foreign student scholarships. So you want to, you know, do searches to look at that. Take up a hobby, join a club. That's another way to network. You never know who you're going to meet. You could meet someone in the business who you could, you know, network. And volunteer. That also builds skills. So my key message, you know, here really during these times is to accept the unexpected. This is unprecedented for everyone. What we don't want to do is stand around and complain. It's a lovely quote from a Netflix series, Lost in Space. So, you know, you want to assess your situation, assess, you know, where opportunities may lie. This will involve, you know, going on Google to do searches and move forward. So yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to share for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alvarez. On to our next speaker, Mrs. Joy Eze. Ms. Joy Eze is a well-seasoned energy professional, a drilling engineer with Royal Dutch Shell, responsible for the design and execution of several oil and gas wells projects. She is based in Trinidad as a project lead engineer, delivering gas wells and contributing to energy sector. She was based in Trinidad as a project lead engineer, delivering gas wells and contributing to energy security and sustainability for the company and country. Previously, she had done a stint with Schlumberger and was a key account manager at Procter & Gamble. Joy holds a first-class degree in electrical electronics engineering from the University of Benin, Nigeria, an MBA from IE Business School, Spain, and currently has an MSc in renewable energy Engineering from the University of Aberdeen in view. She has won several awards, including Best Graduating Student Awards, PNG Visibility King Award, and Shell Service Recognition Awards. She has led in several roles over her career and has skills in business development, project management, and delivery. She is passionate about the energy transition and its future with digitalization. She is also deeply committed to people and particularly women's development, and has served as president of the Shell Trinidad Employees Network, the Balance Network, in the past. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Joy Eze to our main screen.
Good evening, and thank you very much for having me this evening. And thanks to Dr. Tricia for that very apt presentation that's gone before. I hope you can all hear me very well. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so today we're talking about career development and, in uncertain times. And I thought, it's really a broad subject and there are several aspects to it. And Dr. Tricia has actually, shown those graphs on how the oil price has fluctuated over the years and has shared indeed a number of tips on how to stay relevant. I want to focus this evening on my side of things on staying relevant in the face of uncertainty, and I would try to share with you some of my own personal stories and try to see if I can bring some things to light. Okay, if you don't mind, please could you go to the next slide? Thank you. So yeah, I've already been introduced. I won't spend time going through this. I guess one thing that may not have been mentioned in my profile is that I'm a mother, a wife and a mother of 3 kids. I have 3 lovely children, and I indeed love to spend time with my family. All right. So I'm going to start here. Life and uncertainty synonymous. It's a question. When you think about the world we live in right now with the global pandemic, the question of when is it going to cease? I remember when this all kicked off. I still recall sometime in February or so, I was in a meeting and people were asking a question around the impact of the pandemic on the oil price. At the time, it wasn't yet that visible. And I recall the response at the time was, maybe sometime in the summer, it's going to kind of go away. Many people thought that, as the year rolled by, things were going to go back to normal, but it just seems like it went just from bad to worse, and only we really don't know what next. So we know very well in Trinidad here, it's 7 months since the lockdown, borders are closed, and we all have been impacted in one way or the other. When you think about the impact of the pandemic on the economy and how that oil price, just like Dr. Tricia showed there, how it has fluctuated over the years, and in particular, this year, for the first time, probably for the first time, I would believe that oil price went into the negative, and people were actually paying buyers to come take oil. Who would have thought that would ever happen, So I guess one thing that's glaring to all of us is the uncertainty that we definitely do live in today. If anybody has not previously experienced anything, we definitely have in our faces certainly an uncertain time. When you think about the current political climate, US elections coming, for those of you who follow the trends with share prices, I'm sure you would see how it's danced around and how it dropped since February, March, and it hasn't quite picked back up. People are trying to speculate, but of course the elections, those through aspersions, and of course the pandemic still has its impact on all of that. You see all the global trade and economic tensions, with all the countries. When you come into the energy transition space, there's a question of how quickly is this going to happen? or is that going to happen in the next decade, or is it going to happen in 2050 or 2050, or exactly when do we expect that, okay, oil exploration is going to cease altogether and everybody's just going to go into green energy? Exactly when is that going to happen? How fast, or how would it happen in any case? And the question of, am I in the right course at all? Am I taking the right studies? Probably most of you are you're studying petroleum engineering, or you're about to graduate, or you've graduated from petroleum engineering, something related. And the question of, am I doing the right thing? Do I need to make a change? I remember some time back, it was a popular conversation about MBA, to have an MBA or not. I don't know if any of you would have thought about that. So those are some of the kind of questions that fill people's minds about now. And then, of course, the career sector, the working environment is becoming increasingly competitive. You know, definitely number of jobs are shrinking, economies are shrinking. So the number of jobs that are available to vie for, first of all, it's definitely not as much as it used to be. So it's becoming increasingly competitive to get into the job of your dreams. You know, sometime back, you know, people would have talked about job for life. Is there anything like that today? What kind of pay would I get for my job? If I do get a job tomorrow, would I get paid, you know, the kind of salary that I would want to live on? What are the guarantees for a job? You know, so there's so many questions and so many things that I am sure are on your minds with respect to today, with respect to tomorrow and the years to come. And one thing that I am sure about is the fact that life and uncertainty, they're quite synonymous to some extent, because you really, as long as we don't have a crystal ball, we would not be able to clearly tell what tomorrow looks like. So the question then is, what do we do? What does the future hold? How can we better position ourselves for the uncertain future, in quotes? Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So indeed, nobody has a crystal ball, but then there are, you can have a crystal ball in quotes, right? So I titled this slide here, your crystal ball. So what's your crystal ball? What can you control? What's within your sphere of influence and sphere of control? So the question is, what do you do with uncertainties? There are lots of them. What do I do with them? The first thing is recognize and embrace them. Seek out the opportunities that present themselves in uncertainties, whether they are immediate or they are futuristic. Whatever those opportunities are, you need to seek out those opportunities and seize them. I tell you one truth. There are some people, there are some companies that have become wealthier in this pandemic, and that's the truth. You know, so they have seen opportunities within these uncertain times. They have taken hold of those opportunities. Talk about Zoom. We're using Zoom today. Zoom last year wasn't a company that many of us would have ever thought about. Today, the share price of Zoom is out the roof. it's out there, you know, compared to where it was last year, right? So there are opportunities. They are not, all the opportunities may not be immediately visible, but then you need to seek out those opportunities and you need to seize them. And I have a quote that I wrote down here. It says, sometimes the course of our lives depends on what we do or don't do in a few seconds, a heartbeat, when we either seize the opportunity or just miss it. Miss the moment and you never get a chance again. So when those uncertain times show up, when the question of am I studying the right course? Am I in the right career path? What do I do with this uncertainty? When those questions and those uncertainties do show up, I would like to encourage you that rather than sit around and, you know, just say, oh yes, it's an uncertain time, what do I do with it? Recognize it, yes. But then beyond recognizing and embracing it, look for the opportunity in it. I'll give you an example of something that happened with me. So there, Dr. Tricia showed the trend, the oil price trend over the years. So I recall when I joined Shell back in Nigeria. So I started with Shell about 10 years ago in Nigeria. And at the time I joined Shell, onshore operations, we had about 11 rigs in operations. And that was at the peak. So 2014 came around, and there was the price war, and oil price slumped. For those of you that would know about this, oil price slumped drastically. So that's the last slump we would have seen in the last decade. And 11 rigs went down to 3. And it meant that we had less activities at the time. So for me, that was an opportunity right there. And the opportunity I saw was, one, to take on additional studies. That was the point in time I took my MBA part-time and got my degree, right? I recall at that same time, I had talked with my managers then and said, oh, I wanted to take an MBA degree. And they said, oh, that's a good one to have, but could you wait a year? I said, no, I can't wait a year because this is my time. I have never regretted doing that. And that was my opportunity. I saw it, I took it. So look for those opportunities. They do come around. I'll give you another one. I told you here that I am a mother of 3 kids. So when I joined Shell, my first son was about 7 months. And I knew that I wanted to have a family, raise children, and, you know, have a family. But like you would have heard in my biography, I studied electrical electronics engineering. And again, I've never practiced electrical electronics engineering. So when I joined Shell, we went through a few months of training, and then we're going to be assigned to departments. And I was told, oh, you're going to be assigned to well engineering. And I said, oh, what exactly do they do? At the time, I did not really know too much about it. And they said, oh, they drill wells. And I said, okay, that sounds interesting. I'd love to do that. And someone said, hey, one thing, in Shell, they get to do exams. I said, what, exams? Oh, that's fine. I'm not bothered about exams. But I realized that those exams, Shell exams, Shell well engineering exams, round 1 and round 2, are quite intense. And yeah, by the time, at that time that I joined, most people took those 2 exams within, you know, in 5 years. That was the shortest, in quote, time frame that many people took that exam. But I knew that 5 years was just too much. It meant that I would have to put my life on hold, put many things on hold, just to be able to go through that exam and get through my career. And I wanted to be able to have those 2 things going for me. But then, hey, who knows what tomorrow is going to bring? Yeah, I have a little baby now. I want to have more. Who knows when that next one is going to come? Who knows what's going to come with having more kids? And I thought to myself, okay, now's the opportunity to make a run for it and take the 2 exams as quickly as I could. It was hard work, but I made it through in 2.5 years. And I was the first person who did it in 2.5 years. So the point I'm trying to get across to you all is, in life, we would have uncertainties, but what do we do when those uncertain periods come? There usually would be an opportunity within that uncertainty. Seek it out. It's sometimes not immediately visible. Look for it. And when you find it, try to seize it. Because just like I quoted to you previously, when you seize, when you miss, we either seize the opportunity or just miss it. And if you miss the moment, you never get that same chance again. All right, I'll move on to the next point. It says here, create your pathway as you meander. No, don't move the slide yet, sorry. Create your pathway as you meander through school and into the workplace. There are no guaranteed futures, but you can create your pathway. I really appreciate Dr. Tricia's presentation, because she gave us points about how to look out for jobs, and some of those things you need to apply them right now while you're in school. You don't need to wait for when you get out of school and then you get into the job market and then you start searching for a job. No, you actually start creating your pathway right from school. So I'll try to caveat with stories just to give you perspective, right? So I studied electrical electronics engineering. I did internships, and some were in control systems. I did internships where I was an intern with Stombridge as a network professional. At the time, I was trying to decide what path to take. And one thing was sure, I didn't quite like electric cars as much as I loved electronics. So I thought to myself, okay, maybe electronics is the path to go. And I thought, okay, electronics sounds quite close to IT, and it's close to telecoms and networking. And I decided to take a professional exam. At the time, I was in school at that time, and I took the Cisco CCNA professional exam. And in my mind, I was trying to create my pathway, right? And I took that exam. Did I use it? No, I never did. But the story here is that about that same time was when I did when I took my internship with Stombridge, and then an opportunity showed up with Procter & Gamble, where they called for applications for an internship. And I applied. It was going to be like a trip, maybe a week or two, very short. And I applied for it and went for the test. And when I did the test, I was successful. I was the only one successful on that particular day. And I was told, do you really want to go for this internship? It was like an economic summit. And the HR consultant at the time told me, you could either choose to go for this economic summit, or you could, carry on with the interview process for a full-time job. And I said, hey, who doesn't want a full-time job? Yeah, here I am. and I chose my path. And that was how I interviewed for the job I eventually did with Procter & Gamble. It wasn't an engineering job. It was a business development role. Today, it is one of the roles that I think I have done that brought out, the creativity in me, and I really enjoyed it. So the point I'm making here is create your pathway, decide what you want to do. And I have something on the next slide on that. And I'm going to speak on these next 2 points and then come back to the same theme about creating your pathway. And the next thing here is, I said we need to focus on activities inside your zone of control. What are the skills you can acquire? What experiences can you acquire? What choices can you make? Now, I strongly believe that some of the things that are within our control, one major thing that's within our control is our own personal development. And you don't get that just from getting a degree. You get that from acquiring skills, from experiences, from volunteering, so you need to focus on what's within your control. And then the last point here on this slide is avoid trying to impose a structure on things that you can't control. Don't be so hard on yourself and beat yourself hard and become anxious. Next slide, please. All right, so how do we stay relevant through uncertainties? I have this phrase that I love to use, as far as my eyes can see, right? I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what tomorrow is like. I don't know what next, honestly. But as far as I can see, I can make some plans towards, how far I can see and how far I can go. And that's what I want to implore every one of you to try to do. Try to imagine an end picture. And as you go along in life, you will definitely course correct that path as you gain more insight. But for now, where is your end? What do you want to be? Where do you want to get to? What's your end picture? What's your big picture? What's your big goal? When you have that down, then you need to understand for yourself, what are those skills? What are those degrees or certifications or skills I need to acquire to get to that end point? So the point here is, as far as your eyes can see, have a plan, have a vision, have a goal, and begin to, put together what are those things that fit into where I'm heading to. And the question of whether your degree is relevant or not, for me, I don't think it matters so much. I studied a course that I haven't applied, because one thing I know about recruiters I've come to learn over the years is that many times recruiters are looking, especially for graduate hires, they're looking for people who can demonstrate that they are academically sound, not necessarily in a particular subject, but yeah, they do look for people who have acquired a particular degree or two, but give recruiters a reason to take a second look. I graduated as best graduating student in my faculty, my first degree. And one of the things I told myself, and that made me strive for that, was I told myself that, and if you're familiar with Nigeria, we have over 200 million people in Nigeria. So I tell myself that every year, the number of people who graduate from the university and that have a first class degree would be, a number. So what would make a recruiter look at me a second time, look at my CV a second time, and want to invite me for an interview? So have that mindset that you want to give recruiters a reason to take a second look. What will make you stand out? You need to seek out what will make you stand out and go for it. What additional skills do you need to make yourself more useful? Build vocational skills. Dr. Tricia talked there about coding, learning a language, get involved in research. I'll tell you one quick story. I'm one person that I think my typing skills does help me get a lot of things done. And you know how I learned to type? I paid for it right out of secondary school, right out of high school, right? I paid for it myself at the time. This is several years ago. And it was because I thought to myself, okay, this is a skill I'd like to have. It wasn't, it didn't make sense at the time to my parents to fund it, but it made sense to me. So I funded it and I went for it, right? So, when you look at yourself and you decide that, okay, these are some skills that I need to acquire to get to where I'm going, then you need to invest in those things, invest in yourself, invest in those skills you need to get to where you're headed. Update your work experiences through relevant internship opportunities. This could be voluntary, it could be paid. I have done unpaid internships before. And I think those add on to your experiences. Think depth and flexibility. Build on your technical and transferable skills. We can balance both. You can be a deep technical professional, but then if you have the opportunity to acquire a skill that you can transfer, please go for it. And then build foundation and leadership skills through teamwork, communication, problem solving, and many of these things you actually get them by participating in bodies like SPE, like APG, like Dr. Tricia mentioned. Get involved in these extracurricular activities because they build on your own leadership skills, on your ability to collaborate with others, on your communication skills. And then seek opportunities to network. I'm not going to say too much about that because Dr. Tricia touched on that. And that's really it. I don't have anything more to add here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aze. We are moving on to our final speaker for the evening, Mr. Javed Razack. So Mr. Javed Razack is currently the director of the energy segment at Rams Logistics, which includes oversight of all business development, tenders, and contracts for upstream and downstream activities across Trinidad, Guyana, Suriname, and Mexico. Major upstream projects include logistics and shore-based support for all wells drilled in the Guyana-Suriname Basin since 2015 by Exxon, Tullow, Petronas, Cosmos, and Total. Javed has also worked closely with Manpower subsidiary El Dorado Offshore to provide over 250 locals to Guyana's energy sector. His roles at RAMS also dip into marketing and social media, recruitment and training, writing policies and procedures and diversification into renewable energy. Javed has a BSc in Petroleum Geoscience from UWI, Trinidad, and an MSc from Aberdeen University in Oil and Gas Enterprise Management, where he specialized in oil and gas taxation. He spent 3 years at the Ministry of Energy in Trinidad as a geophysicist. Here he worked on approximately 12 offshore and onshore seismic surveys and in the management of all the contracts for licensed acreage in Trinidad and Tobago. Javed has served on the on the extended executive of the Couva Point Research Chamber since 2020 and is director of the Geological Society of Trinidad and Tobago and the former vice president of the AAPG Young Professionals. Please welcome Javed Razack.
All right, thank you very much, Brian, and thanks to the SPE for the invite. I want to build a little bit on what Joy and Tricia said. I think they covered some of what I would point out, so I'll be very specific then in what I'm saying. And just like Joy, I'll give a little background on myself, other than what Brian already said, to give you guys some perspective, right? So I would have done geoscience at UWI in Trinidad, and after UWI, I would have gone to the Ministry of Energy. And I would spend about 3 years there. So in 2014, I left the ministry to take up a scholarship to Aberdeen University. Now, at the time when I left in 2014, this was around August. And if you all remember, August was when oil was $100 a barrel, right? And I remember just in September and October in 2014, we had career fairs at Aberdeen. And I was offered more than one position at that time. As soon as you finish school, based on your resume and so on, we offer you a job by people like Shell, and I think there were a couple others. And then by December, the oil price had already fallen to maybe $30 or $40, and it continued to slide into 2015. And by then, they were laying off people in droves. By the time my degree was finished, the oil price was probably $30 or something like that, and the energy sector was in shambles, right? So in the course of a few months, similar to this year, but of different circumstances, of course, the entire sector got turned upside down, and people who were in school or studying all of a sudden had much less opportunity than they had before. And then the recovery after that was fairly slow. So when I came back to Trinidad in 2015, we had other things going on here. So our budget had just happened, our government had just changed, and their policy as well and rehiring and so on was also different. So I did not have the opportunity to go back to the ministry as I had planned. And I spent a couple of months, looking for opportunities. First, I looked at all the normal players, right? The engineering, the Schlumbergers, Halliburtons, the BP, Shells, and so on. They didn't really have anything vacancies. In fact, most of them had layoffs. And then I started to look at some of the other companies that I knew about. And then a couple of months later, I realized, okay, this energy sector hunting is not working out. I'm going to have to expand search into anything else. And that's the point where I started looking at basically any company in Trinidad where I thought I could add value. So I started applying for jobs in marketing, in sales, in business development, in almost in any area at all that I thought I sent out, I can't remember, at least 100 resumes in that couple of month period. And then there was, after about maybe 4 months or so, you start to feel kind of annoyed and so on. And I got a call from all people from Tattle Insurance, and I was recommended to them by somebody. And they were looking for people well, they were looking for anybody really to do insurance sales, but especially people in the energy sector, because they figured that we would have very high earning colleagues who might be able to get good sales, right? Which was true at the time. I did have a good few friends who work in the sector. So I said, yeah, well, I'll just join. Let me join. It can't hurt. I'll probably learn something anyway. I'm not doing anything else. There's some flexibility in it. Okay, so I'll join, right? And I did get some good training there at the beginning. Definitely was a new area for me in terms of direct sales. The ability to call somebody on the phone and ask them just for something is a tough one. And I must say, it's a pretty tough one to do that. Or to walk into certain areas and try it. I remember going to San Fernando General Hospital and be looking around for people to talk to, and that is a very, very difficult one, I must say. And the thing is, I actually was good at it, I did fairly well in the first few months. I spent about 6 months doing that full time. And in the meantime, while I was there, I said, okay, I still have some flexibility because it wasn't like an 8 to 4 job, right? So I joined the AAPG. That was the first chapter they had in Trinidad. And we started doing quite a lot of activity at that time. I was on a lot of field trips and a lot of groups. I was with GSTT. I think the SPE had a conference that year, so I wrote a paper that was kind of based on my thesis at the time. That's probably when I met Tricia for the first time, sometime during that period. And so I got involved in the different societies at that point. And then about 6 months later, I got the opportunity from Ramps to join. And Ramps was a logistics company now. So they have no need for geologists, they have no need for geophysicists or engineers. But what they were working in Guyana with Exxon. And I said, here what? They're working in Guyana with Exxon. This is probably going to be big. They had only found one, they only drilled the first well at that point. I was like, yeah, this guy I think might be interesting. Let me see what happens, right? And that was a very good decision because I got involved definitely at a good time in Guyana and then Suriname. I'm not doing seismic or geology, but we are working for all the companies that do. And it's quite helpful when we do tenders and business development to understand seismic vessels, to understand drilling tools, to understand the need for these things, because one drill bit that you ship in late or gets held up at customs can hold back your $200,000 a day rig, right? And these are extremely important things to understand. So what I found is that I can use the energy sector experience that I had in a slightly different field within the same sector, right? So that's a little bit of my history, just like so you could get some perspective. I do feel your pain when you guys graduate or have graduated and you find it tough to get a job. I advise you all to try anything. I know that there are geos I know and engineers who, they spend some time in the bank, they spend some time in stores, you're showing that you have that grit to actually keep going, even if you're not getting something that you want. I think that's pretty important for an employer to look at, right? So some tips I have for you guys as well. One of the greatest skills or lack of skills I see in people is the ability to communicate clearly, written and orally, right? So writing emails, it might sound like a trivial thing, but the ability to condense information, be very clear, be very respectful, and send very clear good emails. Sounds very simple, it sounds pretty lame, but it's actually a big skill, especially when you're dealing with clients and they don't necessarily speak English as a first language, or you know a lot of technical jargon and you could break that down for them. That is an extremely valuable skill. So when you guys do your studies and you have literature reviews and you read these technical papers that people like Tricia and Joy write, right? Your ability to take those technical papers and break that down and summarize it and explain it to somebody who doesn't understand necessarily geology or engineering is something I advise you all to work on definitely, right? And I would say that when you take part in these societies like this, like SPE and GSTT and so on, don't just be observing. Give some presentations. Suggest to the organizers that I want to present on this topic. And it could be something related to something you're studying, but it could also be related to anything that you're researching. Right now, you guys could become experts on almost any area of the energy sector if you spend some time online, right? There's very, you don't need to only have done it as a project in school to be able to speak to it or learn about it. So what I advise is that all of you should try to give either joint or single presentations, some talks and so on, and there's lots of societies that will be willing to have you guys. Tailor your resumes as well. So what I realize some people do is that they have one resume and they send that resume out everywhere, right? But if you're applying to Shell and your degrees in petroleum engineering, then you will definitely want to talk about your experience working or visiting rigs and things like that. But if you are applying to say Digicel for a job in marketing, you would not need to play up the experience you have in drilling tools and so on. But you want to tailor your resume a little bit differently to suit the company that you're applying to, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. You should really be tailoring that resume every single time. Some cases you might have a long detailed one, sometimes you might have a short summarized one, and you highlight the different skills depending on what it is. I'll advise you all, make sure you're on LinkedIn, right? Have a LinkedIn profile, be active on LinkedIn. Don't just have it and just have it empty. Fill out all the details, your experience, your hobbies, your training, internships and so on. Be active, comment on people's posts, like different companies, post things of your own, repost stories and articles. The algorithms in LinkedIn make it so that people see when you do those things. They get notifications and it comes up. If Tricia goes and comments on something, now it's quite likely I'll see a notification that Tricia has commented and I'll see what she's writing. and I see her name quite a lot. So then I know who is this person. I see them, I'm familiar with them, I know who they are. I might click on their profile and I'll realize, oh, they studied this. Maybe there's somebody I want to continue. Right now, when we do recruitment, I always check the person's LinkedIn and Facebook profiles before we interview. That's almost mandatory with us for more than one reason. I want to see their social media presence. I want to see their personal brand. I want to see what kind of person they are, how they talk, how they think, if they write, their interests, because all of that plays a major role in the kind of people we want to hire. So if I see somebody on Facebook and they're being racist or things like that, then I don't care how good your resume is, that says a lot about your person, and I don't think that's somebody we want to hire. So keep in mind your personal brand is important. You should be on social media. We're no longer in a world where, well, I don't like social media, so I'm just going to keep quiet and do things like that. If you want to get noticed, if you want to stand out, and if you want to be employable, you need to be out there, right? So Facebook, LinkedIn, you could use Instagram and Twitter as well for work-related things. You could create a brand image around that. Is quite helpful. You all know many people who are influencers and so on Instagram, and some who may actually have even done that in the energy sector. So make sure and you work on that social media presence as well. And the employers are always watching. Potential employers are always watching, right? Similar to speaking at these at SPE talks and so on. Try writing some technical papers, right, to present in these conferences. That's a great thing to have on a resume. Somebody's graduated from university and they have a AAPG or SPE paper under their belt. It means that in some little area you are a bit of an expert, and that speaks a lot. It also means that you can write, you can condense information, you can do a literature review, and all those things are quite valuable as well. So I really advise all of you, when you have upcoming conferences. In fact, I am writing an SPE paper right now for the conference. I was supposed to be this year, but it's next year. And I hope all of you would do something similar for something that's upcoming, right? And it doesn't have to be something you did in school again. It could be anything that you have interest in related to the sector, right? I saw Tricia mention something interesting about looking at courses online, but she specifically mentioned coding, right? And I have a feeling from what I'm seeing that 10, 15 years ago, when you came out of school, it was kind of automatic to know Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. That was like basic skills. I have a very good feeling that in the next 5 to 10 years, coding, basic coding is going to become a basic requirement. Just like the way you need to know Microsoft Word, you're going to be required to know coding. In our company, we have at least 10 people who specialize in coding, and that's what they do. And they are actually now changing the entire way that we do business. And I think that's going to continue to happen. COVID has even pushed that further into the digital world. So all of you will look at some coding courses online, free ones or maybe paid ones. Get some basic understanding of how that works, right? Stay on top of the industry. Both Joy and Tricia mentioned that. A lot of activity in Trinidad, a lot of activity in Guyana and Suriname, a lot of activity all over the world. Be familiar with what's going on. Be able to have that conversation with people when you network with them. And say, hey, I know that Tricia, you work in Heritage, so I hear Heritage is going to do this well program or so on. I hear you guys are a partner with Touchstone. Touchstone just had a big discovery last week. You all are probably really excited about that. Joy, what projects are you working on with Shell? Are you working on the East Coast development that they have, and are you working on the Calibri at the North Coast? And those things help us to build relationships with clients, but it also helps you as students to build relationships with potential employers. They might be impressed that you actually know about that you're familiar, that you're keeping on top of things, right? So read the articles that are out there, check the newspapers, read online articles. They're all there on Google, basically. It's just for you to do that, right? And I would say something virtual that you all will now need to be very good at is using Zoom, using Microsoft Teams, being able to communicate clearly on it, navigate the software and so on. It's something that we learned by force. I don't think any of us a year ago really liked or wanted to do video conferencing. I hated it myself, but now is every single day, and we probably spend most of our day on these software now. So you guys are a generation where you could grow up doing it. You could grow up in the digital world, working remotely and so on. And that is probably a strength and an asset as you go forward. Yeah. And the last point I'll make is that practice public speaking as well. You only get better the more you do it, right? So some people are nervous, some people don't like to speak, but as you do your presentations, as you do things like moderate and host and so on, volunteer and do it more and more as much as possible. It's a really good skill to develop. It doesn't have to be with work or school. It could be in your churches and temples or whatever it is you might go to as well. So just some tips building on what these guys have spoken about before. I'm sure we'll be glad to take any questions you all have.
So we thank you a lot, Javed. We have some questions in the chat here, one from Adrian. So let's say someone got a job during COVID-19. It's not in their field of study and you're learning a lot. Your boss extended your contract 3 times and has been very facilitating with regards to you attending school and working. However, an opportunity came up to work in the field you're pursuing. How does one say to their boss they can't no longer work for them, seeing that a new opportunity arose?
That is an awfully specific question. Okay, I'll take a first crack at that one, right? So I'm seeing the question here. So you have a job and you feel like you didn't study, and you're learning a lot, you got an extension, but your opportunity came up and you feel that you are pursuing. I mean, how do you say to your boss that you can no longer work? I'm pretty sure if you took a job outside your field, that your boss probably knows that, you know, it's something that was not going to be permanent for you, or that you would have been looking elsewhere. Hopefully, if you have a good relationship with them, you can bring it across to them that, hey, I'm getting an opportunity here on something that I have studied or something that I'm really passionate about. I really appreciate everything you've done for me. And I wanted to tell you before I go or before I make a decision, what do you think I should do? You know, that's how I would approach it. I don't know if Tricia may have some other ideas.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, just be open and honest with your boss, and I don't know the nature of the relationship that you have. You know, I guess how much you chat and have exchanges, but you know, a good approach, you know, would actually be to start the conversation and probably even ask their advice. You know, in terms of you explain what the situation is. You know, you explain that you do appreciate everything, you've enjoyed the experience, but the opportunity to do what you really want. And so, you have it conversational, and you never want to burn bridges ever. So, certainly you would want to be open, honest about, you've appreciated what's happened, and have a conversation around it would be my suggestion.
I see a second question, how to get involved in unpaid internships, or hopefully paid internships, especially in Trinidad. Joy or Tricia, you guys have any suggestions on that?
My experience would be more, would not really be in Trinidad in terms of internships, but I could offer my 2 cents the way I have done it in the past in Nigeria though. My approach would be to spot the companies that you're interested in, and Javed did talk about applying to several companies, and that's the way I would approach it. There are different options to different ways to go about it. You could definitely go around to those companies that you'd be interested in, offering some time with them and passing around your CV to those various companies. And you could also look out for people who work in those places. Perhaps someone might be able to help you, especially if they know you, through like an SPE network. If someone knows you, has worked with you for some time, then you've developed a relationship with the person. Yeah, those kind of relationships can definitely help. But by all means, I think you can reach out to various companies and let them know, especially if you are willing to take up internships in a voluntary capacity. You could let them know as well that, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and I need it for the experience. And I think that could help.
Yeah, I would say that I was unaware until I was working here how many energy companies there are in our sector, right? So, you know, when you're in school and so on, and even when I was at the ministry, we were aware of, you know, the bigger players. But now, when I was working across the supply chain, there are hundreds, literally hundreds of companies working in our energy sector in Trinidad alone, right? If you look at the US, now we're into thousands, right? So there are many, many, many companies in the supply chain here that we are not, that you all may not be aware of. And it's not just the 10 of them that you should be seeking internships from, 10 you know, but you should really be finding out who these others are. There may be areas that they can value that you don't know about. And I see another question here about...
Yeah, if I could just add to that, unpaid internships. So, you know, just following on Javed's point about the hundreds of companies, and I think you're probably more likely to get an unpaid internship with not the big names that we're familiar with. So it's probably not going to be your BPs and your Shells. It's probably going to be, you know, the company that has an office somewhere down in Forest Reserve or in Parry Lands or somewhere there. And, you know, one approach, you know, I guess one way to do it is networking. So you meet people at events. Of course, that's hard now during COVID. But, you know, when you have the opportunity to interface with professionals and you have conversations, you know, you could bring it up, you know, hi, you know, do you take, you know, I'm looking for some experience. Do you have anything that I could do? You know, I'm willing to come in, you know, an afternoon or 2 days a week or whatever, and just, you know, get some experience and help you with something. So you're offering something to them, a skill, and of course you get experience as well, because, you know, that's you know, it's not just a take. You also want to demonstrate that you can assist them with something. You know, an approach for some of these smaller players, you know, just drop by the office and say hi. You know, that's probably not going to work for the bigger companies, but some of these smaller companies, they're happy, you know, these smaller operators, they may be very happy somebody walks in and come and, you know, chat. And of course, before you do that, you want to do some research and find out what they do so you can have a conversation, as well as think about what you can offer to do for them as part of that conversation.
Yeah, I guess I'll look at the next question here. Any advice for somebody who wants to write a paper? I mean, I think any topic that you think is relevant, that you're interested in, and that people can learn something from, you know, you can write a paper on. It doesn't have to be extremely complex. It doesn't have to be, I would say just about anything that you have some interest in, and if you feel like you can teach somebody something about. Tricia has written tons of papers, so she might have an idea now.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, keeping abreast of what's going on in industry, and of course we're in Trinidad, so keeping abreast of what may be potential issues or challenges, and so you can identify a particular challenge from, you know, news stories or from other papers, and then you go and do research on that particular thing, maybe see what people are doing in other parts of the world, and you could come and present a research study on how other people have addressed this particular problem. So, you know, it's you know, reading, you know, and keeping abreast of the scientific literature, you know, also can be a good place to source ideas for a paper, that's, you know, research that you can do for a paper.
And if I may add to that, you could also look out for people maybe within the university or people you worked with in SP or anywhere else that do write papers and you're familiar with, and you know, you could walk up to them and let them know you want to, if they have a topic they're working on, you might want to help them through it, and that could be the way you start off. So the first SP paper I wrote, I actually co-authored with someone. I realized she used to write technical papers for SP, and I walked up to her and said at the time if I could assist her, and you know, that way she could introduce me to technical writing and everything. And that was how I wrote my first paper, and since then I've written a few. So that could be one way to start.
All right. There's a question about GPA, about how important is it? I mean, obviously the higher your GPA is, the better for you, but it is, if an employer, it may not be the exact same way. So I would say that a high GPA benefits you directly out of school, but the longer that you spend in industry, it becomes less and less important, right? So I don't think anybody, if I was going for a job now, I don't think anybody really cares about what my GPA was way back when. You know, it depends on the company as well, and the field that you're going into. Some companies do have a requirement for maybe upper second or first class, but I would never tell anybody if the GPA is not important, right? It just may not matter as much whether you get a first class or upper seconds to most people, to most employers, I think.
Yeah, I guess I guess what I'd add to that, some companies, so yeah, Javed is absolutely right. The more experience you've got, you know, nobody really cares about it anymore. Coming straight out of school, I know some companies, particularly the bigger players, you know, when you apply to them, they would have a filter. So the first question they might ask is, what is your GPA? And when you enter that, it either kicks you out the system or you're allowed to proceed. So from that standpoint, you know, depending on you know, if you have ambitions of working for certain people, you may need to keep that GPA up. But you know, it's more important than GPA is your understanding and your knowledge and your skill and being able to convey what you know and have conversations with people. So the GPA is important, but also what you know, what you understand, and how you can communicate that too is also important, because the high GPA may get you across the filter for some companies, but then, you know, when you're asked, you know, about certain concepts or to explain certain things or certain experiences, you know, you can easily get kicked out at that point as well. So it is important, but it isn't everything.
Yeah. I cannot answer your question about coding languages. I know nothing about that, and I don't know if the others do. I would say you could do some research into it and talk to some other people, but I can't answer that one. In terms of publishing papers, I mean, there are calls, as soon as there's a conference advertised, whether locally or internationally, there's always a call for abstracts, usually months and months before. Once you are a member of these societies, you'll most likely get the email, but even if you don't, as long as you know there's a conference upcoming, there's going to be a call for abstracts, and you can definitely contact any one of the local reps, and they'll tell you how you can get in touch. And once the papers once you do a good abstract and it's approved, yeah, your paper will be published. The SPE has a pretty strict and very rigid way of doing it. They are quite detailed. I think AAPG is a little bit more easy to publish papers with, and the other societies may be a little bit different. So yeah. When companies turn you down due to lack of experience, I guess the answer is what do you do? Tricia, what do you do when they say you have no experience?
When you have no experience, so I guess there are several pieces to this. So when you write your application, you know, and what you think of as experience, you know, you need. And this is where I guess opening yourself and having a number of different experiences also have that may not necessarily even be within your sector. So, you know, I guess if you've applied for a job and it says you don't have experience, then you probably need to get some. Or it could be that you may already have some experience that's relevant, but you have not articulated it. You know, so for example, and this is why it's important to get involved in other activities in school, so the extracurricular activities that gets you experience in teamwork and leadership. And you want to showcase that on your resume. You may have it, and some people may not document it, but that may be important for a recruiter. When it comes to specific, I guess, on the job experience, if it is they say you don't specifically have that, and I guess, you know, that's kind of the tailspin sometimes, you know, you don't have the experience, nobody wants to hire you, then you need to seek out an opportunity. And this is when, you know, maybe the volunteering would come in, or you may need to take a sideways step to get that experience and come back into where you need to be. And I guess another piece of that too is in a tight market. So you're coming out with a petroleum engineering degree, and typically the expectation is if I'm graduating with a petroleum engineering degree, I want to work as a petroleum engineer. And if you're applying for jobs, and of course in a tight market, they're going to hire the more experienced people first. You know, that's just simply the reality. And another piece that I'll add in there as well, when you graduate, and say the price is low, and then it goes a couple of years and the price goes up and they start to hire, they're going to hire the fresher graduates first. So that puts people who graduated previously kind of at disadvantage, and you need to be aware of that to take action to make yourself still marketable, whether that's, either, going and do another degree, staying in school, short courses, or getting experience in something else. So you may apply for that job as a petroleum engineer, but, and you're not getting it, consider applying for tech positions, technical assistant positions, or something else still within the industry where you will still get the exposure and build up experience that way, so that when job opportunity for a petroleum engineer opens up, you have the training, the academic training, you would have had some exposure. So you wouldn't have been working as a petroleum engineer, but you would have been maybe interfacing with the engineers and also building up skills as a technician or so that would be relevant to that position. So sometimes it's stepping back and looking a little bit full circle. And, I guess as Joy said, sometimes the path isn't straight. The path sometimes, meander, and you have to make your own path. You have to find an opportunity when the door closes in one place. How, where do you turn to find the next opportunity? And it usually isn't straight. When you talk to for some people it may be straight, but for a lot of people, it's a meandering path to get to ultimately where they want to.
And you never know, sometimes you might like something that is totally different, or like Joy, right? So studied electrical and then is not doing that exactly, right? So you might end up in something slightly off from what you thought. It might be very valuable. Actually, I had hired a petroleum engineer out of UTT about 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. She works with us in sales, right? But more with energy companies. And I think the engineering background is an asset. I don't know, she probably does want to work on a rig at some point. It may or may not happen because she has fallen into that same trap Tricia talked about the fresher graduates are getting hired and the more experienced ones are getting hired. But if you are in that period, you might find it quite difficult to get hired as an engineer. So you also.
And that's the reality, right? Because there is no telling what that's exactly what we're talking about, the uncertainty. There's no telling what the market is going to look like in 2-3 years time, 5 years time. So I mean, you make your path and go with the flow. It could be that you end up in a sector that's not oil and gas. Does it mean you can't make it? Does it mean you can stand out? You definitely can. So I mean, look out for those opportunities, and even if it means taking a step out of what you would have thought is the ideal, I think you should seize the opportunities when you see them.
Yeah, I see a nice question about how do you make your presence felt in an online interview, especially when you can't do it in person. And that's a good question. Not sure I have a good answer for that. I mean, certainly you want to have your camera on. I mean, you don't want to do an interview with no camera. You want to make sure as best as possible that your audio is clear and that you don't have too much nonsense in the background and so on. But I don't know. Making your presence felt online is a bit tough. In person, people can read your body language a bit easier. You can shake hands and laugh and have small talk with them on the side. And in an online interview, it's a bit tough. I don't know if you guys have any suggestions.
I agree that it can be challenging, but there are definitely ways to try to make sure that you're present, not just in body, but in your mind, and your focus is there. Tricia did talk about researching the company before you walk up to them. So definitely you want to make sure you are very well prepared for an interview, the same way you would have been prepared for a face-to-face interview. You want to be prepared, asking the questions and answering the questions and indeed holding the conversation, trying to keep focus. It won't be eye contact now because it's virtual, but then keeping focus on whoever's on the other side. And you would hear all of us talking. We once in a while, act like we're laughing. We're not laughing. We're just trying to be a bit more impressionable and not just sound like we're reading off a a script or something. You try to be a bit more bring yourself out and not just see just your image in the picture, and try to visualize it like it were a face-to-face interview, and try to make the best of it. So that's what I'll say.
I think the preparation would be very much the same as a face-to-face interview. And of course, doing that preparation properly, as Joy said, you have to research the company, think about potential questions that they may ask and be ready for it. The only difference really is that, you're doing it in front of a screen. So you wear a nice, suit. I mean, you could wear shorts because, they're seeing just the top. That might be the only difference. Still dress smart, make sure, you look professional, bring your confidence and be yourself, be conversational, just as you would be in person. I guess I've had the experience of doing interviews virtually from both sides, as an interviewee and as an interviewer. And it's not very much different, other than you're not in the same room. But it's how you connect and interact. So you definitely want to keep it interactive, confident. You sit up straight, you speak confidently, you look into the camera, you don't look down or read, as Joy said. You be yourself, exude confidence, ask questions. When they get to, of course you prepare for the questions and you answer the questions they ask you, and have questions to ask them as well to show that you're interested in the company. So I think preparation is very much the same. And I guess, I don't know if it's easier that you probably be maybe more comfortable in the comfort of your own home, as opposed to having to go into their office and then sit in the waiting room and kind of sweat and you watch other people walking out. So in some ways it may be easier.
So I wanted to take the question about how to get involved in Future Energy Leaders Program by the World Energy Council. So the World Energy Council puts out a call for applications every year. When that is, so this year, the call for application was out sometime in February, March. So let's see what happens next year. And they regularly, turn around folks in it's a group of 100 young energy leaders in that group. So they do call for applications, and they have certain criteria that you have to meet. If anyone is interested, feel free to let me know. And once the call for applications does come out, I would be posting it on my LinkedIn page as well. And you can, feel free, reach out to me if interested. I'm also kind of asking the question about setting up, because in some countries they have a local committee, and it's one of the things I'm having a conversation about setting something up locally as well.
Okay. We have one more question from Neela and Mr. Neela here, so a special guest. So I think we should take this one last question, and then we could proceed with our vote of thanks. So this question is...
Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead, you go ahead.
No, I thought it was just a comment from Neil. I don't think he's asking a question. He's just saying, be interested in the company and be interesting to the company. Yeah, so yeah, definitely be interesting to them as well. How I like to advise people is that you imagine yourself like a business offering a service to a client, right? So if you are TSCT and you're trying to get somebody to buy your product, right? You're trying to service them, trying to bring something to them that they don't have, and you want to show them really good customer service. So yeah, be very interesting to them, try to understand their needs as well. Yeah, it's good general advice.
Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for all of the participants here tonight. Our numbers were really nice. Thank you to all of our speakers. We have a small token of our appreciation, a virtual token of appreciation, and we are prepared. I will just pull that up now. Okay. So thank you, Dr. Alvarez. Thank you very much, Mr. Razack, and thank you very much, Mrs. Joy Eze. So we hope to have you all on another one of our technical sessions once more, and hopefully on another intriguing topic such as this one again. And we do wish you all the best in your endeavors. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you guys add me on LinkedIn sometime soon.
No problem. We will definitely do that. I think everyone here should send you a LinkedIn request by the end of the evening. All of them.
Take care.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Look forward to connecting.